40 years since a plane carrying several hundred pounds of marijuana crashed in Carroll County. One person was killed, and the investigation that followed led to more than a dozen convictions.
But some, they are still asking a very crucial question. Where's Wally? Senior reporter Joe DeShiel in studio tonight with an update on the story he first covered way back in the fall of 1984. Joe, who's Wally? Where is he, and what's going on now?
Well, Kate and Logan, Wally is Wally Thrasher, the central figure in a drug smuggling investigation that stretched from the mountains of Virginia to Central America. The case generated lots of headlines in the 1980s, and now it's the subject of a documentary series coming soon, we expect, to a major streaming service near you. Fancy Gap Mountain was shrouded in fog when the plane went down on October 17, 1984. Investigators from the FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board were getting a closer look at the wreckage when we reached the site the next day.
Investigators identified the plane as a Beechcraft Bonanza, and they say it refueled in Avon Park, Florida, earlier in the week. But without a complete tail number, investigators have been slow to determine the owner of the aircraft or where it was headed.
The crash sparked an investigation that led in surprising directions and resulted in more than a dozen convictions. Author Ron Peterson would write a popular book about Wally Thrasher.
This really dynamic, flamboyant drug pilot who back in the 70s and 80s would fly drugs, marijuana and other drugs from the Caribbean and Mexico and Colombia all the way to Virginia.
Los Angeles producer Doug Tower is now completing a documentary series with Peterson's help. He's conducted 80 interviews.
We've used the past 3 years to essentially break completely new ground in the investigation and be able to find clues that didn't exist 40 years ago, and interview people who weren't willing to talk back then who are now willing to talk.
Thrasher disappeared after the plane crash and was presumed dead in Central America a short time later. But some are still asking, where's Wally? Which happens to be the working title of the documentary. So when and where will we be able to see this documentary series? Those conversations are continuing. But Kate and Logan, the 40th anniversary of the plane crash is coming up in October, and Tower says that would be a great time for a fresh take on this legendary tale.
Absolutely, and what a great way to look back at our archive footage as well. Joe, thank you for telling such good stories from the 80s until now.
A good-looking young man back in the 1980s. Still didn't age today, Joe. Thank you for that.